It was supposed to be an ordinary morning in Judge Caprio's courtroom, but then he walked in, a man with trembling hands, wearing a weathered army jacket and eyes that had seen too much. As the bailiff called his name, the courtroom fell silent. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he stood straight, lifted his shaking hand, and saluted the flag. "Sir, you don't have to salute here." "Veteran." "Sir, habit. I served that flag, even when the world forgot me." The courtroom felt it, the weight of that sentence. He wasn't just another man charged with theft. He was a soldier who once fought for a country he now begged from. The case? Petty theft. He had been caught taking a loaf of bread and a small carton of milk from a store. But the story behind it broke hearts. When Judge Caprio asked why he did it, his answer was simple and shattering. "Veteran, I was hungry, sir. I hadn't eaten in 2 days, and I didn't want to beg. Soldiers don't beg." A police report shows no violence, no argument, just a man who took food and waited for the police to come. The judge looks through the veteran's file. Medical discharge, unpaid pension, lost contact address, VA paperwork, pending. A lifetime of service, erased by a system that forgot to follow up. Judge Caprio leaned forward, not as a judge, but as a human being. "Judge Caprio, son, you fought for this country, and now this country will fight for you." The courtroom gasped. The veteran lowered his head. Tears finally broke through the discipline. He covered his face, ashamed of crying in uniform. Judge Caprio paused, then turned to his clerk. "Judge Caprio, fine waived. Instead, I'm ordering something far greater. Get him connected to the Veteran Outreach Program today." That day, justice didn't punish. It protected. As the veteran left the courtroom, he stopped at the door, turned, and saluted one last time. This time, Judge Caprio stood up and returned the salute. He came in with nothing but a salute and left with something far more powerful: dignity restored. Because sometimes, justice isn't about the law. It's about remembering the people who built it. He came back the next week, cleaner, calmer, and wearing the same faded jacket. Only this time, it looked different. Because dignity changes how even old clothes feel. Inside the courtroom, people whispered, "That's the soldier Judge Caprio helped last week." But the veteran didn't speak. He simply looked at the flag again and saluted. Not out of pride, but gratitude. "Judge Caprio, you still salute that flag, huh?" "Veteran, always, sir. It gave me everything, even if I lost everything else." The courtroom wasn't the same that day. The judge had called him back, not to punish, but to honor. On the table sat a folded envelope, a letter from the Veterans Affairs Outreach Program. Inside, confirmation of temporary housing, medical support, and reactivation of his pension. For a moment, the old soldier's hands trembled again, but not from fear. "Judge Caprio, I told you, son, this city doesn't forget its soldiers." "Veteran, no one's called me son in years." The prosecutor stood up. Even she couldn't hide her emotion. "Prosecutor, Your Honor, this case reminded me what justice really means." And then, something rare happened. The courtroom audience stood up, one by one, and began to clap. It wasn't loud or forced. It was slow, heavy, full of meaning. He had walked in as a defendant and left as a hero. Cut to montage, flashbacks in grayscale. A younger version of him, marching in uniform. His wife smiling at a parade. The same hands saluting the same flag years later. Back to color, the courtroom scene. Judge Caprio. Every flag we salute stands for people like him, and every courtroom should remember that justice without compassion is incomplete. Soft trumpet note echoes the sentiment. As the veteran left the courthouse that day, he stopped near the doorway, looked up at the flag again, and saluted one last time. This time not out of habit, but out of hope. Narrator. They say heroes never ask for recognition. But that day, one found it where he least expected it. Not in medals, not in parades, but in the simple kindness of a man who still believes justice can have a heart. A week had passed since the verdict that changed everything. But for this old soldier, the battle wasn't over. It had just shifted from war zones to waiting rooms. Today he stood in the same courtroom, not as a defendant, but as a man with something to say. Judge Caprio, you asked to address the court, son. Take your time, veteran. When I came here the first time, I was ashamed. Not because I took food, but because I thought I stopped mattering. Veteran continues. When you wear the uniform, you believe the world will always have your back. But when you come home, and there's no home to come back to, you start to wonder if the salute still means anything. He spoke not as a criminal, not as a victim, but as a reminder. Every word hit harder than any gavel strike. Veteran, tearfully, I don't want pity. I just wanted to feel human again. Judge Caprio looks down, removes his glasses, his eyes wet. Judge Caprio, son, what you just said will stay with everyone here longer than any sentence I've ever given. And then, something unexpected. A teenager in the back of the courtroom stood up. Teen, nervously. Your Honor, I know this man. He gave me his coat last winter when I was cold outside the shelter. Teen, he told me, stay warm, kid. A soldier's job never ends. I didn't even know his name until now. Judge Caprio. Well, I think the court has already received its lesson today. Judge Caprio. True justice isn't about punishment. It's about remembering people like him, people who gave even when they had nothing left. The courtroom rose again, not out of sympathy but out of respect. And as the veteran saluted once more, it wasn't just a salute to a flag. It was to hope, reborn, humble, and alive again. That day, in Judge Caprio's courtroom, an old soldier didn't just win mercy, he found home again. The next hearing wasn't just another date on the docket. It was a reunion written by fate. The courtroom door opened quietly, and a man in a neatly pressed blazer entered. His steps were steady, his face lined with age but glowing with pride. In his hand, a small box of medals. Bailiff. Retired Sergeant Daniel Brooks, U.S. Army. Camera pans to the veteran. Eyes widen. Disbelief floods his face. Veteran. Danny? Is that really you? They hadn't seen each other in over 25 years. Two soldiers once side by side, now standing in a courtroom under the same flag. Brooks had flown across the country when he saw his friend's story on local news. He came not to testify for the law, but for loyalty. Your Honor, this man saved my life overseas. When our convoy was hit, he carried me for 2 miles under fire. He risked everything so I could come home. And now I find him homeless? Courtroom murmurs. Camera close-up on Judge Caprio's face, eyes filled with emotion. Judge Caprio. I remember this country used to call men like you heroes. Seems we've forgotten how to treat them that way. The air grew heavy, not with guilt, but realization. This wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about repair. Veteran. I didn't want anyone to know, sir. I wasn't ashamed of what I did, just of what I'd become. Judge removes his glasses, rubs his eyes slowly. Judge Caprio. You didn't become less of a soldier. This nation became less of a guardian. Audience silent. A few tears. The prosecutor covers her mouth. Then Judge Caprio did something unusual. He stood up. He stepped down from the bench, something he rarely does, and walked toward the veteran. He extended his hand. Judge Caprio. Son, you've done your duty. He turned to the courtroom. Judge Caprio. Dismiss all charges. And from this moment, I want the city's veterans liaison to connect him to housing and medical benefits today. Not tomorrow, today. But it didn't stop there. A man in the back row, a small business owner, stood up. Businessman. Your Honor, I run a maintenance company. If this soldier's willing, I'd be honored to give him a job. Judge Caprio. Well, soldier, it seems you're being drafted again, this time for a new mission. In that moment, justice turned into something more powerful than law. It became community. Judge Caprio. We salute our heroes in parades, but the real salute is how we stand by them when the music stops. That day, a courtroom wasn't just a place of verdicts. It became a battlefield of compassion, where a forgotten soldier finally won the one victory that mattered most, a life worth living again. When the lights dim and the crowd goes home, the courtroom doesn't rest. It holds every word ever spoken inside its walls, every plea, every tear, every promise. That morning after the verdict, Judge Caprio sat alone for a moment. In front of him lay two things, a folded flag and the veteran's service photo. He whispered to no one, "We're judged not by the laws we write, but by the hearts we listen to." Cut to exterior, city sunrise. The veteran steps out of a small shelter, wearing a clean shirt and the same worn jacket. He still carries the dog tags in his fist. A week later, he reported to his new job, sweeping the floors of a maintenance warehouse, greeting every worker with a nod and a smile. Each morning before the shift bell, he would look up at the small flag hanging above the door. The salute was quieter now, but it meant more. Veteran. They told me a soldier never stops serving. Guess they were right, just serving in a different way now. He was no longer a case number. He was part of a community again. Proof that one act of mercy can echo far beyond four courtroom walls. Judge Caprio. You'll all learn statutes, motions, procedures. But if you forget humanity, you'll lose the very reason justice exists. That veteran didn't need punishment. He needed a reminder that the country he served still remembers him. The law tells us what's right. Compassion reminds us who's right there in front of us. But somewhere, on a quiet sidewalk, a soldier still pauses at dusk, lifts his hand, and salutes. He doesn't do it for medals or applause. He does it for memory, for the brothers he lost, for the judge who believed, for a flag that finally gave something back. Mercy doesn't erase the law, it completes it. Because sometimes the greatest verdict isn't guilty or not guilty. It's a simple acknowledgement that a human being stood before us, and we chose to see him, not his mistakes. Justice isn't power. Justice is understanding.